Retirement suited Jeremy. He'd traded his suit and tie for comfortable khakis and breathable cotton shirts. His days had a new, leisurely rhythm. Each morning began with a gentle yoga routine, learned from a YouTube instructor with a soothing voice. Afterward, Jeremy would brew a pot of green tea and settle in to catch up on the news. But the highlight of his day was his afternoon walk along the shore. The beach was a 5-minute walk from his cozy bungalow. He'd purchased it shortly after retiring, drawn to the calming presence of the ocean. Salt air and the rhythmic crash of waves had a way of washing away the remnants of his busy city life. Jeremy felt lighter here, freer. The beach was his sanctuary. On his walks, Jeremy carried a small cloth bag. It wasn't for collecting seashells or interesting stones like some of the other beachgoers. Jeremy had a different purpose. He'd found that the tides often deposited bits of trash along the high tide line. Plastic bottles, candy wrappers, lost flip-flops, remnants of careless beachgoers. He saw it as his small way of giving back to the place that brought him so much peace. Over time, Jeremy had come to recognize the regulars on his walks. There was the older couple always holding hands and strolling near the water's edge. The woman wore a wide-brimmed straw hat, and the man sported a faded baseball cap. Jeremy imagined them as young sweethearts, their love weathering the years like the sturdy pier in the distance. He often saw a young mother pushing a stroller, her toddler son giggling at the seagulls that trailed behind them. And then there was the woman in the red bikini. She usually appeared around the same time as Jeremy, her long hair flowing behind her as she jogged down the beach. Jeremy, ever the gentleman, never stared, but he couldn't help but admire her dedication to fitness. The lifeguards stationed in their elevated chairs were also familiar faces. They were always alert, their eyes scanning the water for any signs of trouble. Jeremy, a former accountant, appreciated their vigilance, their commitment to keeping everyone safe. He often wondered about their lives outside of their posts, the dreams and aspirations hidden beneath their tanned skin and mirrored sunglasses. What fascinated Jeremy most, however, were the tides themselves. He downloaded a tide chart app on his phone and made a habit of checking it each morning. He was captivated by the moon's pull on the ocean, the way it dictated the ebb and flow of the water. Low tide was his favorite. The receding water revealed a hidden world. Tide pools teeming with tiny crabs and starfish clinging precariously to rocks. He'd spend minutes at a time just observing these miniature ecosystems, marveling at the delicate balance of life. One afternoon, as Jeremy made his way down the familiar path to the beach, he noticed something unusual. The tide was exceptionally low, lower than he'd ever seen it before. The water had retreated so far that it exposed a vast expanse of sand, stretching out like a shimmering desert. Intrigued, Jeremy ventured further down the beach. His curiosity piqued. He walked for what felt like hours, mesmerized by the unusual seascape. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the sand. Jeremy stopped for a moment, turning to admire the fiery colors painting the sky. That's when he noticed it, or rather the absence of it. The waves had stopped crashing. The seagulls had fallen silent. The air, usually alive with the salty tang of the ocean, hung heavy and still. Even the breeze, which usually ruffled his hair and sent the sand swirling around his feet, had vanished. It was as if someone had hit the pause button on the world around him. Confusion washed over Jeremy, followed by a surge of adrenaline. He glanced at his watch, but the second hand was frozen in place. He tapped the face, but it remained unresponsive. Time, it seemed, had stopped. Panic threatened to engulf him, but Jeremy took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. He was a man of logic, a retired accountant who dealt in facts and figures. There had to be a rational explanation for this. He scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of unusual activity. Had he stumbled into some sort of government experiment? Was this a bizarre, meteorological phenomenon? His mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of the impossible. Maybe it was the sun's reflection on the water, playing tricks on his eyes. Or perhaps he'd wandered into some sort of time warp, a pocket of distorted reality. He'd read about such things in science fiction novels, but he'd always dismissed them as flights of fancy. Now, faced with the impossible, he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about the world.